Some more questions. We have a question from Facebook from Makato Ozawa, who says, Sandy, any chance we can put something together for Mike Trout?
Like 3 franchises?
We had a feeling it wouldn't be all that long of an answer.
Wouldn't be able to answer that one.
Yeah.
Different question, though. How much longer do you see yourself in this role as the general manager of the Mets? How much longer do you want to do this?
Now, what brought that question up?
Look, this wasn't from Facebook. This is our brain.
With all this makeup on, you can still tell that I'm that
No,
old?
look, you look great. You're clearly successful. You signed Yoenis Cespedes this offseason. But how much longer do you want to do it?
I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. It's probably one of the problems I've had over the last 40 years. I really haven't thought about my career that much. It's kind of from one thing to the next. I still enjoy it. My family still enjoys it. I know I could take a Viking river cruise or something if I wanted to, but
There's time for that.
That's what you would do?
I could row by Citi Field in in the estuary there. I just enjoy what I'm doing. So right now I don't have any plans to voluntarily retire.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
All right. How about this? Every time you've moved around, those jobs are different from one job to the other. Outside of being a part of this show, what's different about this job here in New York, and maybe dealing with as much media? What's different than maybe your previous jobs?
Well, I think there's more scrutiny, and it comes from the media. It also comes from the fans. I mean, the fans are knowledgeable. They're passionate. I think this is a baseball town, if you will. I'm not sure San Diego was.
Right.
It's not a football town now either.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference. And I think that, around here you have to stay on your toes. You've got to really stay, not focused, probably too strong a word, but you got to pay attention.
Yeah, it's interesting. Speaking of the fans, Sandy, the one thing that to me, if I had to describe your tenure, the one word would be patience. And I'll be honest, you even taught me patience as a New York fan, right? We always react.
No way, that's impossible.
Yeah, no, you have. I've been a much patient individual since watching you develop, here
in your voice.
This team, though, there have been a lot of moves where, people do something, and you to the last minute, with Cespedes or just different things. Even last year, going through some of the losing streaks, getting swept by the Rockies or, people calling for college job, things like that. How difficult has it been in this market for a competitor like yourself to be patient?
Well, patience is not really a strategy unless at the end of that patient period you actually do something constructive. So it's more about timing. It's more about finding the right time to do it. And sometimes you have to wait and consider, what's happening. But for example, if you go back to the trade deadline 2015, I mean, we made a deal and we were patient. We made a deal and it didn't work out. We made another one more or less the next day. So it's about timing and having a sense of what that right timing is. And maybe it takes me a little longer to figure it out than most, and that translates into patience. I don't know.
So, Sandy, in the early 80s, you're in Oakland, you're a young GM, and a lawyer walking around with Bill James mimeographs, basically, which made you an outlier in the game at that point.
Yeah.
We're at the point now at a different stage of your career where every team seemingly has an analytics department, values that. It's a mainstream thing. Number one, could you ever have imagined that it would go mainstream the way I'm sure it was thought of back in the 80s? And number two, how much harder does that make it to have an edge now that everybody knows about these things?
Well, if you take it all the way back to the early 80s when we started this, there was never any way to know that it would become mainstream. And certainly as we continue to utilize that approach and not publicize it until, much
Someone
later.
wrote a book.
It was somewhat proprietary, and so we were trying to keep it narrowly, confined as opposed to well publicized. There's no way today that you can really run a team without having an analytics department. I think that the key thing is figuring out a way to use that as well as more traditional scouting. And we all say we do that. The real question is, well, how? And it's not that easy to do. So Actually, when I started, I thought if there was any trend, it would be that more lawyers would be GMs, and that did not happen. No. It did happen briefly with the Mets, actually, if you go back to Al Harrison years ago. But it is interesting the way things have gone.
More GMs who didn't play, certainly, and that's something that you probably felt like more of an outlier on back then than you would now.
Yeah, no, you know, as I go back to the first GM meeting that I attended with people like Bavesi and, you know, a host of other, Calvin Griff. I mean, there were, some of the names were really old school. And the things have, you know, again, it's been a long time. It's been like 35 years. So it's not surprising that something new has developed. But, you know, it's a very different group. And I have the same sort of generational issue that I have to face now that I faced then. I mean, I was one of the very few, you know, young people and not schooled in baseball. And now I'm one of the very few, dare I say, you know, old people.
Sure.
Yeah, right. So I'm still bridging a gap.